to Intoxicated Master, where we talk about drinking culture, pop culture, politics, and anything else that comes up. Joining me as always is Jim.
Hello, everybody.
Kale.
Hi.
And Brandon from an undisclosed location, possibly in the middle of the ocean.
Hello, my people.
All right. Today we're doing a list of our we've sort of talked around superhero movies a little bit, and I think we're going to do some top 5, top 10 lists regarding our favorite superhero movies in the future. But I thought we'd start off by talking about the opposite end of that, which is our least favorite superhero movies. But before we talk about heroic things, let's talk about heroic drinks. Jim, what are you having?
I am having a raspberry flavored gin and tonic.
Fair enough. Kale?
Two-buck Chuck.
Two-buck Chuck, indeed.
Classic.
Classy and graceful. Brandon, you?
Right now, I'm just having some water. I'm on vacation, so I didn't really bring any liquor with me.
Then you're not doing vacation correctly.
Looks like salt water.
We just recently did on the channel. You should have probably seen this by the time this comes out. I'm having a thing that sticks to my coaster, a mojito. We actually did the videos on this a little while ago. It's a great drink. I just started growing mint out in our new house, so I have fresh mint. And when you have fresh mint, you should make mojitos because it's a great cocktail, very simple, very refreshing. So Brandon's on vacation. We're going to change things up a little bit today. So we're going to have him give his list first, and then he's probably going to have to take off. First of all, did you guys have any thoughts on how you did your list? The only reason I bring that up because there are a lot of bad superhero movies, so I had a hard time picking the worst ones. And so my list is sort of ones that were bad, but also ones that I feel like personally affected me. Because I feel like there are a lot of bad superhero movies, but there's a few that just like you watch and it almost feels like they're attacking you on a personal level. So before we get started, do you guys have any thoughts on like how you put your list together or how you decided on what was what? Jim, why don't you start off?
So I chose bad superhero movies that I actually saw. I was amazed at how many bad superhero movies there were once I looked at some lists of what superhero movies have been made. And then I was really surprised at how few of the actual bad movies I actually saw. Because at the time, I think I probably thought, oh, that looks bad. I'm just not going to see that. So I chose movies that I actually saw, which means somehow I got tricked into going to see these terrible, terrible, terrible movies.
Okay, what about you?
I went through a couple of lists and jot down my own list of the ones that I knew about or had definitely seen. And I kind of broke it down. Honestly, there's 6 of them that I will defend. I will say they were listed as bad movies, and I will defend them. And then there's a whole bunch of honorable mentions, and I got my top 5 worst that I picked, but technically it's 6, but we're doing 5, so 6 will have to be like an honorable mention.
I definitely have a couple honorable mentions. Brandon, how'd you put your I can't talk today. Brandon, how did you put your list together?
Well, I ran into the same problem. Good.
You're cutting out on us.
I ran into the same problem as Jim. I looked at like 5 different lists, and I hadn't seen most of them. So basically, it came down to one that I have actually seen.
Sounds good. Brandon, because you're kind of on a time crunch, why don't you go ahead and start us off with your number 5? We'll kind of work your list, and then we'll talk about ours, since our lists are better anyway.
Okay. Well, number 5, I'm going to put it out there. I know people will probably disagree, and it wasn't actually on any of the lists, but I'm going to say Iron Man 3. I was pretty bored by Iron Man 3. I could not wait for it to be over. I didn't understand why everything was exploding all the time. It just couldn't wait for it to be done.
I couldn't agree more.
I couldn't disagree more. So Iron Man 3 is not my favorite superhero movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it does deal with trauma. It does. I feel like Tony Stark is maybe a more real character in that movie than he is in the previous 2. And I think that's good. It's good to see a real person. Kale, what would you think of this one?
Well, Iron Man 3 was not the best of the bunch for sure, but I wouldn't crap all over it either. Like you said, I mean, it deals with PTSD, his relationship with Pepper, the fake Mandarin. I mean, there's a lot of things in there that you don't want to miss. I mean, the introduction of the Iron Patriot.
You could definitely miss the fake Mandarin.
I liked him. I thought Ben Kingsley was really funny in that part, and especially since we got the real Mandarin later on, and Trevor Slattery comes back. I that didn't really bother me at all. I think the third act is pretty weak. I think all the suits kind of turn into tinfoil when they need them to be tinfoil. But that being said, I liked a lot of the movie. I thought Guy Ritchie's pretty good in it. I thought Ben Kingsley was funny. Yeah, no, overall, I think it's definitely not going to be on my top 5 list of Marvel movies, and we will get there. But I enjoyed it. Jim, do you have any other thoughts on Iron Man 3?
So
Any of your haters' comments?
I actually, being a big Iron Man fan, I was surprised the Mandarin part didn't bother me. I thought Ben Kingsley played the part really well, and it was really good, humorous relief. I just thought the plot was stupid, and then it got more and more and more ridiculous and bad.
All right, Brandon, why don't you move on to your number 4?
Okay, number 4 was Batman and Robin. I think the only legitimately funny part in it was the Holy Rusted Metal Batman.
Holy Rusted Metal Batman! Huh?
Part where the guy playing Batman, I forget which one it is. Is it George Clooney?
That's Batman Forever.
No,
is it? Oh,
I thought Batman Forever is Val Kilmer.
Yeah, but the Holy Rusted Metal, I think that's in Batman Forever.
Oh, I gotcha.
Oh, right.
I'll look it up to make sure. Keep talking. I'll look it up to make sure I'm not being wrong.
That's the one with the Riddler and Two-Face in it.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's the wrong one because the Batman and Robin is Schwarzenegger, as Mr. Freeze. No, and well, that's one of the main problems. Mr. Freeze is just terrible. I mean, everything is a cold joke, which if you watch the Batman animated series, that's not Mr. Freeze.
Yes, it was, but Batman Forever is where that line comes from. But you're right about everything else. And yeah, Batman and Robin is it's not a good movie. it's not a good movie.
It's not fun. It's not like even the camping. I read that they intentionally wanted to go back to the camping thing. I don't know why anybody would intentionally want to do that. I don't know how you intentionally be camping without it backfiring in the first place. But like the Bat card was a Joel Schumacher joke that he just thought was funny, so he put it in himself. I don't know. All of it just seemed blech.
I disagree a little bit, and then I think you can go campy. I think the 1960s Batman movie is pretty good. I think it's kind of fun and goofball or whatever, and I think you can do that. But you can't do it the way Schumacher did. Although I have to say, the one thing I will say is the Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are not as much worse than Batman and Batman the second Batman. What was it called?
Batman Returns.
Batman Returns, yeah. I forgot he had to return before he was Forever. And I don't think that Batman 89 and Batman Returns are all that good. People sort of seem to think that the original 1989 Batman movie is sacrosanct and Batman Forever and Batman and Robin are terrible. I think they're worse than that, but not a ton worse than that. Jim, what is your feeling on the Batman and the Robin after they were Forever?
Yeah, so the first 4 Batman movies are all bad of differing degrees. The first one is probably the least bad. I disliked all of them. 2 of them made my list. So yeah.
I am a fan of Michael Keaton as Batman.
You didn't like Danny DeVito's Penguin? That was like
I
super
don't like
gross
Penguin
and weird.
altogether.
Even though that movie did not make my list, I despised I don't like the Penguin to begin with, and Danny DeVito's Penguin was just disgusting.
I will say that as a child, as a 12-year-old boy watching Batman Returns, you can tell when you discover your own sexuality. And watching Michelle Pfeiffer in that movie, it's like, oh, I guess I'm straight. I guess that's right. There we go. Good information to have. But that's about all I could say good about this. Okay, what did you think of Batman and Robin?
Batman and Robin and Batman Forever will come up later, but I'm going to save that.
Okay. I will say Schumacher tried for something. I don't think he accomplished it. I don't think it's very good, but he did try for something, which is actually more than you can say for some movies. But anyway, Brand, what is your number 3?
I'm gonna go. It's another one, though not in that line. With Batman versus Superman.
Oh shit.
That movie just goes on forever. There's a lot of stuff about Martha's.
Save Martha.
And I don't even know. I mean, like, I was excited when Wonder Woman came on. And then she's barely in it at all. And I don't know. I hated the guy playing Lex Luthor. I hated Jesse Eisenberg. That's the thing. I hated his Lex Luthor and have since grown to hate him just altogether. It's terrible and it's long. So not only is it something you don't want to sit through, it's something you have to sit through for just hours on end, maybe days.
To be fair, it's still shorter than the Snyder cut of the Justice League, which is, I believe, 6 hours or 8 hours long. I can't remember. It's
Why?
Because Zack Snyder.
Is that the extended version?
Yeah, the Snyder. By the way, if you watch the new season of The Boys, they have a direct shot across the bow of Zack Snyder because there's this The Seven movie. The Seven is the heroes / villains of The Boys, and they're doing a recut, and they have this asshole director who's coming in and demanding his own cut of this movie. Yeah, it's bad. The thing is, I kind of feel bad for Jesse Eisenberg because he did exactly what Zack Snyder told him to do. It was just the stupidest thing on earth. So it's like you almost feel bad for yelling at an actor for doing what their director tells them to do. It was
every movie he's in, he acts exactly the same.
He doesn't act the same as he did.
He's
in that
always
movie. He was ridiculous.
He was so much
movie.
fun, wasn't he? In Zombieland.
Yeah, he was one of the main guys.
He seemed really good in Zombieland, and it turns out that's the only thing I've liked him in so far.
I'm sure he's been good in other things. I can't think of one. Well, he was in The Social Network, which I have not seen.
Me neither.
People say is very good. Jim, what are your feelings on when Batman met Sally? I mean, Superman.
So I felt like there were some good scenes in the movie, but overall it was very long and not a great movie. It did not.
It was unnecessary.
It did not make my list, mostly because I felt like some of it was entertaining. Like, I feel like the scene where Batman saves one of the Marthas. No spoilers. You don't know which Martha it is.
I think we all know which Martha ends up getting killed in literally every single thing Batman has ever been in.
So I thought that scene was pretty good. I will say it's a highly disappointing film because, I mean, so much of the imagery is pulled from, the classic Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns, Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
And how do you mess up a movie where the premise is Batman fights Superman? I mean, you have to.
And Batman is so
work at
ridiculously muscled up. He looks like he can barely turn.
He can.
If he had to fight somebody on his right side and then fight somebody on his left side, they'd just win.
Well, I think he'd just flex and they would die. Yeah, and we really shouldn't gloss over how stupid the Martha thing was. Like, it's just nothing that anybody would say. Like
Yeah.
if somebody was killing you and you wanted and your mom was in trouble, you wouldn't say save Martha. You'd say save my mom.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't say your mom's name. You just wouldn't. Everybody would say save my mom. It doesn't. And also, why would we're not going to relitigate this because it's absolutely ridiculous. I think Wonder Woman had a good intro thing. And I think that's about the best thing I can say about the movie.
You know who
and
else
Batman
would
beating
say-
up the bad guys in the little warehouse was pretty good too. That was some pretty good Batman stuff.
That's
the
scene
only
I was
other
talking about.
person, and like Superman is adopted, I guess, kind of, but the only other person that would save his mother's name instead of his mother would be Webster. The Superman Webster,
Yeah, but he wouldn't say his mom. He would say his dad.
he'd say save ma'am.
Right. Yeah. Kale, do you have any thoughts on, again, the Batman and the Superman? You got kicked off there for a second, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna be popping in and out tonight, I think. No, it was one of my honorable mentions. The main thing I was just gonna say is unnecessary. It's a movie that never needed to be made. You could have just skipped right to Justice League and everybody would have been fine. You didn't need to do all that. And like you guys were saying about the whole Martha thing, and it's just, I don't know. They were just throwing shit in there. I think they didn't even know what they were doing. They were spitballing.
And Batman kills just a shitload of people in that movie. He is just killing people right and left. It's like the whole Batman code, that got thrown way out the window. It's not like he killed one guy out of necessity. He's like, just can't wait to kill people in that movie.
It's like Superman could be bad for the city, he says as he's snapping necks and like shooting people in the face.
Well, he was a threatening alien force. No, but a direct contrast to the Batman, where you talked about how he like came to terms with not being just a brutalizer. And in Batman versus Superman, it seems like in the very beginning, Batman's gone very much more brutal. He's branding people and shit.
I think you can defend that idea of Batman as somebody who's maybe older and has sort of lost touch and is jaded or whatnot. But I don't know. He still is like, he's still super ready to kill everybody. I understand. I don't even mind if Batman kills people sometimes, but he's like gleefully murdering everybody in sight. And it's like, okay.
Okay.
And the whole time he's like, I got to stop Superman. He's a threat. And it's like,
yeah,
maybe you're the threat.
You're yelling at him from a pile of bodies. And
I'm saving you people.
He's
all right,
a
Brandon,
good
what
guy
are we
with
at,
a gun. No.
what are we up to? Are we up to your number 2?
Number 2, I put Suicide Squad.
What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
Again, it's kind of down to just the ones I've seen.
Yeah, wait, just to clarify, is that Suicide Squad or the Suicide Squad? Is it the James Gunn one or the first one?
The first one.
Gotcha.
I actually don't know a lot of what happened in that movie. So many people were red shirts, like they were built just to die.
Here comes Slipknot, the man who can climb anything. Wonderful.
I don't remember most of their names or how they died or why they even showed up. There didn't even seem to be a good reason to have that squad. You have Superman, he could just win. I'm not sure why they were even there according to the movie. I'm sure there's a better explanation in the comics, but it wasn't given to us in the movie.
It was a magic villain. Superman couldn't do it. Also, does anyone even remember who the villain was? Like,
By the way, they're the ones that created the villain in the movie.
yes.
So in other words, if they had never set that team up, there wouldn't have been any reason for them to have that villain in the first place. So it's like they cancel themselves out.
Yeah.
Well, they are kind of playing the part of a superhero CIA, so that kind of makes sense.
I guess maybe in the end, it actually makes sense in how cyclic it is.
Yes.
If you want to watch a really good YouTube video about the entire thing, watch Folding Ideas take on Suicide Squad. It's kind of a long one, but it's really good, and it's from a movie editor's perspective.
Kale, do you have any Suicide Squad thoughts?
It's on my list, and it was a giant steaming pile of stupid.
The one thing I would like to say, I think James Gunn's The Suicide Squad was actually a worse movie overall, but it's much more interesting. Like it's a bad movie, but in more interesting ways. Whereas the original Suicide Squad is just a really, I mean, aside from all the problems, it's an incredibly generic movie. Um, and they're supposed to be the team they sent into Superman, and they've got the girl with the baseball bat, the guy that can shoot things good, the guy with the boomerangs, and the guy who's kind of a crocodile. I mean, these
And the
this
fire
is the
guy.
super team, and the fire guy's actually powerful, but he's like the only one. It's like, oh, we
And
need
he
to
still
call in the
lost.
person who can hit something with a baseball bat. And it's like, but can't anybody do that?
Yeah. How's it a superpower? Were you
Being
bitten by
crazy.
an active bat? How did that happen?
She was bit by a radioactive. Yeah.
Babe Ruth bitter.
Yeah, yeah. Returned vampire Babe Ruth.
So
I think we could probably build an image series out of that, by the way.
So I will say I really disliked this movie, and I didn't even really dislike one of the things that a lot of people disliked was the Joker.
Are you sweet talking me?
Like, it was fine. I'm not a huge Joker fan. It didn't ruin the movie for me. The rest of the movie ruined the movie for me. That's how bad it was.
That's pretty good.
I will say the Joker actually works perfectly well if you say that that wasn't actually the Joker, but it was Jason Todd who was turned by the Joker. I think that would have been a great like subplot to do, and they just threw it on the floor. So yeah, I think the movie feels more than anything else just due to being aggressively generic. And like the little guys they had to fight were like the eyeball guys, who's just like they're just like, hi, we're the generic villain that can be mowed down very quickly because we have to have the scene where the good guys mow down a bunch of villains, and so we're the eyeball guys. Yeah,
terrible.
All right, so I think that brings us to your numero uno, unless you have any honorable mentions.
No, I don't. Like I said, they really had to come down to the ones I've seen and actually remember something about. So it's really kind of a limiting factor. My number one is weird that I placed it at number one because I actually like this one way better than the other ones I just mentioned. But it's I don't know. I like the movie. It's not a particularly good movie. Is Sucker Punch? I think that's a really stylish movie. I love the dream sequences. I love how they become empowered only in their own escapist mentality. No matter how much bad stuff is happening to them in the real world, they kind of gain these powers. I liked the actors in it. Wasn't Scott Glenn in that movie?
Yeah, he's the one who's like helping them out or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's also got Oscar Isaacs in it too. He plays like the jailer.
Yeah, it's not a good movie, but it is. It's better than the other four I mentioned.
There is a video that one of the guys I watch on YouTube did as kind of a defense of Sucker Punch. And again, I don't think it's a particularly good movie either. I do think it looks pretty neat. I mean, Zack Snyder, I don't think he's a great director, but I think he's a pretty good cinematographer. I think he can build a scene well. He can make a scene that looks good well, even if it doesn't particularly work, from a narrative point of view. Jim or Cale, have you guys watched Sucker Punch?
Yeah. I mean, I watched it once when it first came out, and definitely not a good movie, but I did like the visual feel of it. I liked that it had a real creepy and kind of depressing twist to it.
Yeah, and it's almost steampunky without having a lot of the aesthetic to it. But
yeah.
Cale, did you see Sucker Punch?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've never actually watched it the whole way through. I mean, it seems muddled to me because it's like this, like I'm escaping and like fighting in big battles, but then it's like supposed to be like somehow like secretly all in her head or something, and I couldn't really. It's mixed up. It's hard to follow.
It's not just you. It is definitely muddled.
It also has the main song was Silver Sun Pickups. Panic Switch was a pretty good song. All right, I think we're going to say goodbye to Brandon. He's going to go off and be on vacation like some kind of a loser. And we're going to talk more about bad superhero movies. So
Enjoy spending time with your family.
loser.
Yep.
Hi, Brandon.
Well, it was fun. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
All right, now that we got rid of him, let's talk about real stuff. I want to say that I am amazed that going through Brandon's list of 5 movies and not one of mine were mentioned. So I think I feel like I won already.
You're a big winner.
Big winner.
He got a couple of mine.
Well, I'm going to start off. I'll go with, I think I'll go with my number 5 first, because I know it hasn't been mentioned yet. And again, I kind of feel like I wanted movies that I was looking forward to, and I had some level of interest in when they came out and were very disappointing. And the first one that I thought of was The Green Lantern.
God damn, that's beautiful.
Although famously Ryan Reynolds, or Deadpool in continuity, has shot Ryan Reynolds before he made that movie. So apparently that movie never actually existed. So I'm just imagining it. If you've watched Deadpool 2, that joke makes sense. If not, I sound like a crazy person. That being said, it's a colossal mess of a movie. It just doesn't, nothing makes any sense. It looks terrible. The plot isn't very good. It's that thing where they were doing for a while, every villain was just like a big cloud that the hero had to fight. I mean, Hector Hammond, I think Peter Sarsgaard kind of tries to do something with that role, but I don't think there's much that anybody could have done with that role. Taika Waititi's in that amazingly. And it's just dog shit. It's just dog shit beginning to end. There's nothing you can, I can't think of anything good to say about the movie. I don't know. Jim, what do you think about that? And then we'll go on to Kale.
So it didn't make my list of one of the worst movies because I thought it was bad, but not horrid. I hated the villain. I'm with you. Fantastic Four did the same thing with the Rise of the Silver Surfer. Why do you take Galactus, who's, I don't know, I think a relatively interesting villain, and turn him into some faceless galactic storm thing?
That's what I was gonna say. Galactus may not be cool, but he is at least interesting.
Right. So same thing with the Green Lantern. Like, I mean, it's not like Green Lantern has a tremendous amount of great villains, but Sinestro's in the movie. Why isn't he the villain?
I know, right?
I don't know. Like,
Well, obviously you didn't watch the post-credit scene where he becomes the villain.
right. And I will say that one thing was I was actually hoping that it wasn't going to be bad enough that they wouldn't make a second Green Lantern movie, but it was. And so we never got to see Sinestro be the villain. So
What did you think of Green Lantern?
It's on my honorable mentions list. It's one of those movies where it seems like it just wasn't meant to be. It doesn't translate well from comics to a movie, I don't think. It doesn't sell.
I think Gail's frozen up a little bit there. Yeah, I agree. And on top of that, just the CG. The CG in that movie is just so bad. And, there's a lot of movies that I like that had bad CG as part of them. But this movie, the CG was like the cornerstone of the movie was the CG. I mean, they literally made his costume out of CG. No, I think Green Lantern is worse than that as far as CG. Because remember, at least in Hulk, there's only there's the Hulk and the dogs is basically the main part of the CG. In Green Lantern, everything is CG. Like the bad guy, the good guy, the all the stuff he's doing, everything is CG, and it's all just terrible. And also it has Mark Strong, who plays the villain in that, who also plays the villain in Kick-Ass, who also plays the villain in Shazam. And so I'm wondering that Mark Strong is just now, we want to make a forgettable, superhero movie, and we want somebody to be the, mustache twirling bad guy. Go get Mark Strong.
All right, what's your next one? Since we're down 2 people.
I think you are up next.
Oh, I'm up next. All right, I'm gonna go with one of the Fantastic Four movies. It could have been any of them, honestly, but my least favorite and one that I was most hopeful for was the third one.
Say that again?
It's fantastic.
Yes, it is.
Really great cast. You know, they have Michael.
I think
B.
you mean
Jordan.
the fourth one.
Yes, the fourth one.
The fourth
Sorry.
one. Fan Four Stick.
Michael B. Jordan is Johnny Storm. Miles Teller is Mr. Fantastic. Kate Mara is Invisible Woman. Has a relatively good, like if you watch the preview, has a relatively good look to it. It's kind of retelling of the origin story, which I'm glad it seems like superhero movies are kind of moving past feeling like they have to always tell the origin story. But you know, the initial setup is they get their powers, they're captured by the military, they find out that their experiments have some unintended consequences, and they have to, you know, try and solve that. Is great, but the script is just terrible. The end scene where they're on some alternate dimension planet, the special for, when was this made? Like 2015. The special effects are terrible, especially considering how recent it is, and it is seriously a hot mess.
Yeah, it's a real bad movie. It's an abysmal film. The thing, by the way, it is 2015, and I think you're right that the script is probably bad. However, we don't really know because this film had tremendous amounts of studio interference, and even the pacing of this movie is so strange because it's like there's a first act, a second act, kind of, and then just a quick conclusion. Like there's not like a traditional like third act. It's just kind of like they do the first act and second act, and then there's Doom and they fight him real quick, and it's just kind of it's so weird. So apparently Josh Trank says that he has another version of this movie, which is really, really great. I am somewhat dubious of that. But that's what he says. Kale, Fan Four Stick, the famous fourth, even though the first Fantastic Four movie was basically never seen until much later on, but the technical fourth Fantastic Four movie.
I do have something to say about the Fantastic Four, and I'm going to save it for another round, but I will come back to it.
Okay. Yeah, I hate it too. It's awful. It didn't make my list, but it probably should have, because it's real bad. Kale, what is your number 5?
I will speak quickly because I never know how much time I'm getting. Thank you, Verizon. My number 5 is Howard the Duck.
Maybe it's not a man you should be looking for.
And I think it's because it was just bad timing for the movie, and not a good character, especially a standalone character to base a movie on. And it seemed like it was kind of riding on the coattails of the Turtles. It looked very similar visually to the Turtle movies, Ninja Turtles specifically, not just any turtles. But yeah, that's my number 5, Howard the Duck. I mean, it probably, like, by itself, if you were to just watch that movie just as is, you'd think, okay, well, that was a fun little adventure. But it's, you know, based on another story, and it just, like, the main bad guy in it, the red-haired guy that loses his freaking mind, wasn't he the Mr. Rooney in
Yeah,
Ferris Bueller?
and don't Google him too much unless you want to, you know, get some real bad, you know, info on him. He's not a very good guy. By the way, that came before the Turtles movies.
Well, I mean, that's what when I thought back to it, that's what it reminded me of. I'm just saying, it's a superhero movie. It's a hero movie. I don't know if it's a superhero movie. It falls into that category.
Well, he's a Marvel character. He definitely falls into it.
The thing is, like, Howard the Duck was just an unimpressive character overall. He was just, Oh, lame duck, so to speak. You know who he reminds me of is
Screw you for that.
Paul Reiser. He reminds me of Paul Reiser, I think is his name. The guy from Mad About You, and
Yeah.
he was in Aliens.
Um,
That's who he was like if Paul Reiser was a duck.
I think that's the first time anybody said that, Gail. Now, I think Howard the Duck can be a good character. I think that he's a snarky sort of a character. He's not supposed to be really like a superhero or anything like that. It's supposed to be kind of just a snarky guy saying snarky things. And I think that if you keep it on a low level and do kind of a detective story, I think he could probably make a pretty good movie. But I probably wouldn't have made it in 1986.
I like that they kind of peppered him into the MCU as just little like jabs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, that appeals to your nostalgia of it without actually having to delve too deep into the character.
So, do I remember right that this is the first Marvel movie?
I believe so.
And how is that even possible? That Howard the Duck is the first property that gets licensed as a movie.
Because movies are weird.
I wonder.
Thanks, MovieBob.
I'll look that up. By the way, Howard the Duck does pop up in the final scene of Avengers Endgame. So he is among everyone standing there holding a big ass gun for like a split second. You can see him.
Interesting.
So, Jim, what were your thoughts on Howard the Duck?
Didn't see it.
I don't know that I've seen it all the way through.
It's weird ancient monsters from space trying to invade Earth.
Yeah, it is. It is the first one. I'm just. This is Wikipedia. By the way, co-produced by Lucasfilm. That was a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, it's a bad movie. I think they could do a good Howard the Duck movie, but that wasn't it. So I'm going to move on with my number 4. This is one that I sort of struggled with a little bit, and every time I would pair, off movies from my list, because I started off with about 12 or so, and I just could never delete this off because of so many things that it does wrong and so many bad things about it, and that is X-Men Origins Wolverine. They think the number one thing, like the thing that puts it over the top, there's a million things that are bad about this movie. I mean, first of all, bringing in Deadpool and then sewing his mouth shut is just like, why would you do that? Like, that's the stupidest, like, the reason people like Deadpool today is because of him talking all the time. And you're going to, like, it. But no, that aside, was the fact that this movie comes out, and I want to see what year. So this movie comes out in 2009. Which that blows my mind. It was 2009. The original X-Men movie came out in 2000. So Wolverine's claws look worse in X-Men Origins Wolverine than they do in the first X-Men movie. And that is sort of an unforgivable thing. You can't look worse than a movie that came out 10 years ago and probably had a smaller budget. It's just unforgivable. His claw, they have these just horrible CGI claws that just look so horrible and fake. And it's like, no, you just give him a metal thing to hold in his hand so he has metal claws. And everybody's like, hey, look at the metal claws. Isn't that cool? And they didn't. They were like, no, we're going to give him the... And then they have the team, and there's just like this sort of random peppering of X-Men characters in there. You have like the Blob, and Emma Frost is actually in it a little bit. And then Scott Summers is in it a little bit. And of course, Gambit, which is, if you ever want to look at the career of somebody who has made a lot of bad decisions as far as casting, Taylor Kitsch, who I think is a good actor. This is sort of one of the first in his string of like, oop, I shouldn't have taken that role. So yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think of X-Men Origins Wolverine? Which is, by the way, a shitty title to begin with.
It's seriously, it's a
Call it Wolverine Origins. That's a better title. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, it's a terrible movie. I mean, it didn't make my list just because I honestly couldn't stomach the thought of going back and trying to refresh my memory of how bad it was. So, I mean, it ends with the Deadpool scene on top of a nuclear reactor with Deadpool that's not Deadpool, that can't talk. Just the whole thing does not make any sense. It's like a solo movie with a team, even though it's a solo movie, like it's just it's bad. And I like hugely disappointing. I had liked almost all of the X-Men movies up to that point, and it was terrible.
Kale, X-Men Origins Wolverine. Your well-known love for the character of Wolverine.
Yeah,
Bub.
I'm gonna probably upset some fanboys here, but I don't really care that much for Wolverine. I think he's a boring character. I never watched X-Men Origins Wolverine or whatever the fuck it's called, because it was my understanding it was just 2 hours of him going nonstop,
What?
and there was even a guy that made a viral video about it.
It wasn't not 2 hours of him doing that. I will say one good thing about it: the opening scene with him and Liev Schreiber like fighting in all these wars and stuff is actually pretty good. It's pretty well produced, and I think Liev Schreiber was actually pretty good as Sabretooth as well. And that's about the best I can say about it.
And it's all downhill from there.
Oh yeah. It just rockets downhill. It's terminal velocity.
There's another movie that they're in together, where Liev Schreiber takes Hugh Jackman. He travels through time and brings him to the future by accident or whatever, and so Hugh Jackman's just doing all this silly stuff because he doesn't understand the modern world. But no, other than that, like the only Wolverine story that I actually went out of my way.
Oh, Kate and Leopold. I didn't know Liev Schreiber was in that. Sorry, I was looking that up.
But Logan. I actually liked Logan. I thought that was a good movie, and not just because Wolverine dies a horrible, horrible death.
Well, I was actually
because
I feel like Kale was the one person that stood up in the theater and Logan was like, "Yes, take it."
I find it amazing looking back at the short history of superhero films that like they can make some pretty good X-Men films and then they can drop this entire pile of dung of a movie. And I think maybe the next Wolverine solo movie or the one before it, I don't know, there's at least 3 Wolverine solo movies, I could be wrong, was also terrible. And then they made Logan, which was, in my opinion, excellent.
I think that we might do a podcast Sunday just about watching the Wolverine trilogy and the vast array of quality in those 3 movies, because the first one is dog shit. The second one is interesting, but has some dog shit CGI and this plot's a little weird, but like you feel like Hugh Jackman is doing a good job. And then Logan, which is excellent. And like, it's weird to see movies. First of all, it's weird to see any movies where you get better over time. Like that's a strange thing. And also to see movies where you end up at a place where it's an excellent movie. Go figure.
Yeah, it's shocking. The other thing, I don't think I said this earlier, is it's amazing how many of the superhero movies from like 1995 through 2010 were awful. And how that didn't end superhero movies as we know it is beyond me.
Yeah, I'm just going through just the Marvel properties, and there's some not very good stuff in there, and even the good stuff isn't great going back to it. You know, I don't know. I am going to move on to my number 3. And this is a movie, I think we might have mentioned it in a previous episode. Might have mentioned it last week, actually. I can't remember. I've been editing a bunch of our episodes, and so they kind of get jumbled together in my head a little bit. But it's Wonder Woman 84. So I think the first Wonder Woman movie is a legit good try at a superhero movie. I think it sort of falls apart in the third act with all the CGI and Ares and all this stuff. Just kind of, it ends up being kind of muddled, whatever. But so you watch that, and the rumor was that basically the director, who is Patty Jenkins, right? I'm going to double check that. The director had sort of more carte blanche in the second movie than she did in the first, and that a lot of people thought that the real problem with that first movie was sort of Zack Snyder getting involved. Yeah, it is Patty Jenkins. Sort of Zack Snyder getting involved to have a bigger, more bombastic third act. And so this thought of her having more autonomy in the second movie, it was kind of like, oh, so maybe we're going to get a really good Wonder Woman movie. And you watch it, and it is dog shit. It is just a dog shit movie. I mean, beginning to end, it looks terrible. The effects are bad. The characters don't mean anything. It's just like I can't think of a good thing to say about this movie. The villain is sort of Donald Trumpy, but not even in like a fun way. And it's Pedro Pascal, who I like Pedro Pascal a lot. I think he's a really good actor, but not in this. And they bring Chris Pine back in probably the creepiest way you could imagine bringing a character back, where like he takes over this other guy's body and just runs his body and then does the deed with Wonder Woman. And it's like, that's, I mean, I hate to use the R word, but I mean, that's what that is. I mean, that's really, really creepy and weird. And why would you do that? The finale is horrible. It is just a really bad movie. I don't know. Have you guys seen Wonder Woman 84? And if you haven't, don't.
Yes, and it is seriously, it is awful. I mean, even for the recent DC movies, I don't understand why you would if you're making a comic book movie, why do you have abstract villains? I really don't understand. If you want to have an abstract villain, don't make a superhero movie. This guy grants wishes. Like, how is that a supervillain? Like, seriously.
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is hire a good writer, which they kind of fell out of that first stumbling block of hiring somebody who could write something good. But like the cast, it's Gal Gadot, Chris Pine, Pedro Pascal, Kristen Wiig, Robin Wright, Connie Nielsen. Like,
good.
It's a really good cast. It's a super solid cast, and they just did fuck all with it. I mean, really. Kale, did you see this one?
I did not see it.
I doubt we're probably winning you over to see it.
Well, no, because this is my thing. It seems to be an ongoing theme. Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman 84, this Suicide Squad. They're all like super hyped. DC way overhypes all their movies. They get all these previews, all these ads, like promotions.
We lost you.
But he's right. It's sort of funny. And Kale brings up a good point there that sometimes I feel like the best DC movies are the ones that kind of just come out of nowhere. I mean, like Birds of Prey and Shazam and the Batman. Because I mean, for being a Batman, go ahead. Sorry, Kale.
Oh, I was just finishing. Thanks, Verizon. That when you finally see the product that they've been pumping up to you, you finally see it, and it's like,
Well, like I said, that's why I think sometimes the best DC movies are the ones that don't get hyped up. The sort of littler under the radar ones. And you like them, like they're good. Like Shazam is not a hugely popular movie, but it's fun. Like you watch that movie, the CG's a little janky at times, but it's kind of a fun movie about a kid who can turn into a big superhero. And he has fun. It's just kind of a fun movie. And then you watch, I don't know. I don't know what they were doing with this movie. It is not good. So Kale, you have not missed it, and you will be fine not having ever seen it. Trust me. That being said, Jim, why don't we move on to your number 3?
So this one was kind of mentioned earlier when Brandon was talking about Batman and Robin. So I'm going to mention the other Batman movie that is really terrible. I mean, there's several that are pretty bad, but Batman Forever is my number one bad Batman movie with Val Kilmer as Batman. He's not tremendous, but he's not the worst thing in the film. Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face and Jim Carrey as the Riddler are the two worst things in the film. And it's like beyond over the top, beyond campy. It's like they intentionally tried to make the worst Batman film on the planet. I honestly can't even imagine what they could have done to make it worse. That's how bad I hate this film.
I do sometimes think that Batman and Robin being as bad as it is sort of takes some of the spotlight off of how bad Batman Forever is. Tommy Lee Jones, especially, like you sort of know at this point in his career, Tommy Lee Jones had been in The Client and the Fugitive, and he was known as being this really serious, really solid dramatic actor. He was in an earlier movie from I think the late '80s, which I really liked as a kid, called The Park Is Mine, and it's about this Vietnam veteran who takes over Central Park to like try and draw attention to veterans issues. And then he's in this, and you're like, what were you thinking? Like, did you not know how to tell Joel Schumacher at some point, like, I think maybe we're going a little bit too far with this, and I think this is everything looks ridiculous. And Jim Carrey, of course, at that point in his career, had no problem with just going, 7,000 miles over the top.
Right.
And yeah, it's a nightmare. I mean, bat nipples. Do you need to go any farther than bat nipples?
No, you don't.
Kale, what is your opinion on bat nipples?
They're unnecessary, and you guys keep hitting on these Batman movies, and I'm trying to save this because
there's no saving it, Kale. Free the bat nipples.
No, I'm just saying I'm gonna get to this later. It's just you guys keep talking about it before we've gotten to it, and I don't want to ruin what I have to say about it yet. But
Okay.
who knows?
While Kale gets back on, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird what they were doing. I don't know what they were thinking when they were making those movies.
I mean, I get a chance to say anything.
We'll get there. The one thing that they sort of knew is that the Batman Returns was sort of a bridge too far for a lot of the advertisers, because they didn't want to see Danny DeVito biting off somebody's nose and showing blood squirting out of said nose that he's trying to bite off. And so McDonald's was like, yeah, that's not really what we're looking for. So I think when they were doing the next Batman movie and, Burton had dropped out, they wanted to go for a lighter tone, which I get, but I think they could have gone for a lighter tone in a way that didn't involve them making a cartoon. And that I say that, but that's actually kind of an insult to cartoons.
Yeah, because Batman the Animated Series is about a million times more serious.
Right. It's
better.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at the marketing potential that they completely missed out on. You could have got a free nose in every Happy Meal.
Drenched in blood.
So true. Or half a face.
It's
Or
just
a full
like a
face.
potato wedge ketchup. It's a potato wedge and some ketchup. It looks like a nose. Come on.
No, they're going to be real noses or nothing.
And I will confess that Two-Face is one of my least favorite Batman villains of all time.
The thing is, I love Two-Face. I especially when I was a kid, I thought he was a great villain. But I didn't think he was great in this.
Him completely uncompelling.
All right, Kate, what is your number 3?
4, 3.
We're on 3.
Oh. Okay. Number 3, Fantastic Four. All of the Fantastic Fours, because none of them are any good at all. Ever. I don't care which one you pick. They're all shit.
I'm pushing back on that a little bit.
I will say this. I was scrolling today and I saw that the MCU is announcing that they're making their version of the Fantastic Four. And it will be quite a collection of positive energy from the universe to form that into something that's not terrible. Because so far it's just been one disappointment after another. That's all I'm saying. I watched the movies. I'm not saying there aren't parts I don't like, but as a whole, it's kind of shit.
Yeah.
I would push back on the first 2 Fantastic Four movies hold a little bit of a special place. I don't think I would call either of them good. I think Chris Evans is good. And Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis are both good in those parts. And the actor who plays Reed is pretty good. The Invisible Woman, her name is escaping me right now.
Jessica Alba.
Jessica Alba, yeah. I think she's fine. I don't think she's bad. Maybe not particularly notable, but not bad. And I think actually the guy that plays Doom could be good, but I think they kind of cartoonified it a little bit too much. But I don't hate those first two movies. I can rewatch them. I mean, even with the ridiculous Galactus stuff. And actually, I think the Silver Surfer, they did pretty well. I mean, as well as I think you could have done at that point. But then, yeah, Fantastic, as I previously said, is, total dog shit.
I would argue that maybe Galactus isn't a bad guy because he's just eating.
Well, Galactus is a complicated character, but Jim, what thoughts do you have on the first two Fantastic Four movies?
Well, I will say Galactus is hangry. Number one.
It's a Snickers.
I will say I'm going to go to the future of the Fantastic Four and actually say that I hope they deal with the Fantastic Four like they dealt with this guy here. That instead of making a bunch of Fantastic Four movies, which hasn't worked out, that they use Fantastic Four as a spice in the other movies.
Unfortunately, I think they have planned an actual.
Yeah.
I think it could be good. I think you do it.
Yeah,
I think the way you do it is sort of a family adventure movie, and you send them into outer space and they meet some aliens and solve some alien problems. And you just kind of keep them off Earth. I think that's the best way to do it. Maybe they run into Captain Marvel.
It'll be the new Guardians of the Galaxy. It'll be fun. I mean, honestly, I think if you can make the Guardians of the Galaxy compelling story, why can't you make the Fantastic Four compelling story?
Go ahead, Kale. Sorry.
I was just saying, I think the MCU's on a path to start linking all these storylines, bringing together the X-Men and Fantastic Four and everybody into the same universe.
Welcome.
I think that being said, I'm going to move on to my number two. And my number two is a big old number two, which is actually a number 4. And that is Superman 4, A Quest for Peace. Where do you begin with this movie? I think if you look at Fantastic, you can say that maybe there was a good movie somewhere in the script. And a lot of these other movies, while there's problems, Superman 4 just has every single problem right off the bat. It's a bad script. They didn't have enough money. Superman acquires the weird powers of being able to rebuild walls with his eyes. Which is not a power I was aware he had before this. It is. Oh man,
you can shoot rainbows.
Huh?
You can shoot rainbows.
Well, he just does all sorts.
Look up all the unused powers of Superman someday. It's just they have a catch-all for oh yeah, he can do that now.
Well, it's sort of it's one of the big party fouls for a movie that we talked about earlier. It comes out in 1987, and the original Superman comes out, I think, in 78. Is that right?
That's right.
So it's 9 years after the original Superman, and it looks worse than the original Superman. And I mean, that's one thing you just if you don't have the money to make the movie, don't make the movie. Because it looks so terrible. And the villain is just this generic 80s hair metal band singer with electric metal nails. And they have just
nuclear powered.
The worst fight scenes in the world are in that movie. It's Nuclear Man, right? Is that his name?
I don't even know if he has a name, but remember when he hurls all the nukes into the sun?
Yeah, he hurls. He has, but in a big net. In a big net, he has a big net of nuclear weapons. Just throws them at the sun.
That he hurls 93 billion miles away, or million.
Yeah, I don't know, Jim. Talk about this movie so I don't have to anymore.
I honestly cannot believe that I've never seen this movie. But I will say part of that is because Superman 3 was so terrible that I just gave up. So I actually liked
Even
Superman 2, but I think that was because I was young and couldn't tell how bad it was. I enjoyed that Superman 2 had actual villains from the comics, and Superman 4, like, I don't understand. They've been making Superman comics at this point for 50 years. How can you not come up with like a villain?
Well, so
that
Superman
was the
3, Superman 3 traumatized me as a kid. That computer woman who comes out, if you're like, 5 years old or 10 years old, she was terrifying.
Sis?
That was incredibly scary.
Silver eyes.
But like, you get the impression they were originally planning on doing Brainiac for that, but they, for whatever idea, didn't, and just did like, what's his name, Robert Vaughn, just kind of being like a bad stockbroker or something. And so 3 definitely was not good, but 4 is just like, wow, they just went, it's like they went out of their way to do everything wrong in that movie. And it looks terrible. Like, even by the standards of the day, it looked terrible.
Yeah.
Because like, it's easy to go back and question the first Superman movie now with our technology today and say, it doesn't actually look that great now. And it's like, yeah, but that movie came out a year before I was born, and I'm old as shit. I mean, not as old as you guys, but pretty old. And but like, so at the time, people saw that movie and it looked incredible. And people saw this at the time and were like, this movie wouldn't have looked incredible 10 years ago.
I will say for Superman 3, the Clark versus Superman fight is kind of interesting.
And you got Richard Pryor, although kind of miscast in that movie. Is kind of like, I don't know, it just wasn't really, I think it was like his thing. But I don't know. Did either of you guys see this one? Or, well, Kale, excuse me, Jim, you said you didn't see this one. Kale, did you see this one in the theater?
I'm pretty sure I saw it on video or something.
I think I did too. Yeah. What a bunch of poop. All right, Jim, what is your number 2? And is it as steamy as my number 2?
So I'm going to get, it's hard to choose, man, but I'm going to go with Thor Dark World. Just because it's probably the most boring superhero movie I've ever watched. I mean, I won't say the material was fantastic, but it was from a famous run of Walt Simonson during Thor, and it seems like they could have done a little something more with this movie. It's just, the villains are literally faceless. They put on masks, you can't see their face. Like, there's nothing compelling about the movie whatsoever. There's no reason to watch it. It doesn't move the Marvel Universe story forward. It doesn't move Thor's story forward. It's a waste of a movie.
I am disappointed because I love Christopher Eccleston. I always pronounce his name wrong.
Yeah,
and he is nothing in this movie. there is no character. He's playing bad guy. He's playing bad guy part 2.
Yeah, and I mean, one of his sidekicks that he makes is based on a comic character, Curse, that I remember reading those original comics and thinking, this is kind of a cool villain for Thor, and they just kind of toss away villain in this movie that doesn't mean anything. Just, it's a big disappointment. I mean, I thought the first Thor movie was, when it came out, it wasn't the best thing I'd ever seen, but there are definitely parts of it that I thought were interesting. And then the second movie, I honestly can't believe they made more Thor movies after the second movie. It was that bad. And then, of course, in the third Thor movie, they made fun of this movie by having a mini play where they mocked how ridiculous this movie was. It's that bad. They mocked it in the next movie.
I've got to be honest, I don't hate this movie as much as everybody does. I think it is aggressively generic in every conceivable way. Um, it's one of those movies I could never hate because I don't think there's enough substance there to hate. It's just like, by the way, this is one of the few movies that had a tie-in to Agents of Shield. So there was a little while there where each new MCU movie would have a tie-in to Agents of Shield, and this is, I think, the one with Captain America: Winter Soldier. I think was the last one. So if you consider that a positive, it had that. I don't know if that's really a positive.
So I feel like you and I kind of don't disagree on this because I feel like it's on here not because it's terrible, but because it's the most boring.
Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, it's mostly nothing. Kale, what did you think of this one?
It did not receive a lot of fanfare, like you guys said. I want to point out right off the bat that whenever I say, the first Thor movie, Mike always says Thor, but he didn't do that to you. Anyway, yeah, Thor: The Dark World doesn't have a lot of redeeming traits. However, it does have a few key things that do help move the storyline along. One, Loki and Thor's relationship as brothers, the fact that they just lost their mother, the fact that Jane has one of the Infinity Stones existing in her or whatever, so that moves that storyline along. As far as the Dark Elves go, being the main bad, though, it's like you said, it's very generic. I mean, it could be replaced with anybody.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I like the Thor and Loki stuff. I mean, I think that Chris, good Lord, names escape me. Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston just have a good rapport. I think they just work on screen very well together. By the way, if people don't know, Tom Hiddleston originally actually auditioned to be Thor. And much as I wish Tom Hiddleston many good things, I am so glad he didn't get that part and was cast in this role instead. Because he's so good. He's just, I mean, the Loki series is fantastic. Yeah, and their stuff is great together. And you do get an Infinity Stone in the end. They go see the Collector, but yeah, it's mostly just so generic.
What's your favorite Loki line?
You've literally stabbed people in the back like 50 times.
I'd never do it again.
I don't know. I really like his stuff in the TV series a lot. I think he's really good in that. And the Loki we're seeing in the TV series isn't the one from Endgame because it comes from a different time period. I can't think what my favorite line would be. He's good. He's just fun to watch. I think he has great screen presence. I don't know, Jim. Can you think of one?
All right.
I cannot.
He's got a million. I'm wrong for not being able to think of them, but yeah, he's good.
Well, the two that came right to my head, because that's why I brought it up, were from Ragnarok. The one where he's like, "I've been falling for 30 minutes."
I have been falling for 30 minutes.
Or the one where Banner's like, he just talked about killing me because he was just like, he's like, "You're not gonna kill us" or something like that, and he's like, he said like it's early or something like that.
All right, Kale, what is your number 2?
My number 2. I'll give you a hint. It stars Sylvester Stallone, and he says, "I am the law."
Okay, we're gonna
And
have an
that's
argument.
Judge Dredd.
Why did you judge me?
You killed innocent people.
The means to an end.
You started a massacre.
I caused the revolution.
You betrayed the law.
Law!
Yeah,
Judge Dredd.
you're going down.
No, Kale, you're wrong about only one thing in this movie. Go ahead, you talk and I'll talk.
It's not good. It's very plasticky and it's very by the numbers, and just he is not the right person. I will say this: the Carl Urban version of Judge Dredd was excellent. It was a lot of fun. It was hokey, and I mean, it had some of the greatest actors that Mike's ever liked, like Rob Schneider.
Fantastic.
He loves that
actor.
guy, and
And the big war robot.
And
How could Schneider not say this movie?
Okay, Kale is wrong in only one thing on this movie. This movie does not deserve to be in number 2. This movie clearly, and I'll give way to my next one, deserves to be in the number 1 spot for the worst comic book film ever made. It is terrible. It is nothing. It is plastic. It is just a shit show from beginning to end. It has nothing to do with Judge Dredd. And it sort of infuriates me even more. And I think the reason I put this number 1 is because I did see Dredd, the one with Carl Urban.
Mama is not the law. I am the law.
And that movie is, in my mind, nearly perfect. It would definitely go, if we ever do a list of top 10, superhero movies altogether, that will probably be on the list. I think it is a perfect sort of retrospective on 1980s action films. And it is visceral, and he doesn't take the fucking helmet off. And it's great. Judge Dredd is a big old mess of nothing. If the problem with Thor: The Dark World is that it's generic, Judge Dredd is somehow even more generic than that. I mean, the character that Sylvester Stallone is playing is just Sylvester Stallone, except more generic. It is shit. It is a big, giant, messy, liquidy pile of shit. I despise this movie. In the very end, everything just starts exploding. There's no reason for it. There is no reason. I watched the movie a second time, and in the end, everything's exploding around him and God, I can't think of the other actor's name. The whole lab just starts exploding, and they never explain why. It just does. It's because it's the end of the movie. It's like there's a ticking clock, and like when the movie's almost over, everything has to start exploding. I hate this movie so much. I can't even describe how much I hate this movie. That's why it was my number 1. Jim, how do you feel about this stellar film?
So I think you guys are overreacting. I think you should take a look at.
How dare you say I'm overreacting?
The hero movies that came a couple years before and a couple years after, and this movie is just fine compared to its contemporaries. It's got some great imagery in it. I think overall the plot idea of the police council becoming corrupt and trying to create super cops is relatively good. I think Max von Sydow single-handedly should keep this from being in the bottom 5 superhero movies. I think he's pretty good in it. I don't know. I think for me it falls into like a 1980s Dune category of it's bad enough that it's kind of worth watching.
No.
How does
no?
I am the law.
Jim's argument?
It's Sylvester Stallone and Rob Schneider doing a team-up movie. That alone just makes me want to just throw it in the garbage forever. Like if I knew nothing else, like, hey, you want to see like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone and Rob Schneider teaming up in 1995? And it's like, no, I don't. The only time that was okay was in Demolition Man, because Demolition Man was actually good. This
movie is Demolition Man.
No, how dare you? You wash your mouth out with soap,
However,
for issuing such horrific statements.
If you really want to see a great Sylvester Stallone movie, you watch Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. That is a great Sylvester Stallone movie.
I would watch Stop or My Mom Will Shoot until my mom shot, rather than watch this movie once. I despise this movie so much.
I have a serious question, and it's complete aside. Are there any actors that you can think of besides Max von Sydow and why is his name slipping my mind?
Apparently, you can't think of that actor either.
Right, the original James Bond.
Oh, Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, that consistently appear in complete pieces of crap, yet are considered great actors.
That's a good question. Yeah, Sean Connery's in a whole bunch of bad movies.
Right.
Although Max von Sydow's in a lot of good movies too. A lot of people hate Needful Things, and I like Needful Things.
I love that movie.
Trying to think. So actors that are good actors that are always in bad movies. Well, Taylor Kitsch.
This may be an episode for another time.
Taylor Kitsch is in a lot of bad movies, and I think he's a pretty good actor. But he was in a ton of them. We're gonna put this on the list. This might be a good top 5 for us to do on our own. But yeah, actors that are good actors that are always in
Good
shitty
actors
movies.
in bad movies.
Yeah, no, I hate this movie so much. And like I said, I think the reason I hate this movie as much as I do is because we got Dread, which is, again, I think one of those movies that is basically perfect, that I would not change a single, frame of film of, because you have like a female sidekick, but not one that has to constantly be rescued. And you have a great villain. By the way, an actress that does not get, even though she's been in a lot of things, still doesn't get the credit she deserves, is Lena Headey. Was one of the Lannisters in Game of Thrones. She was Sarah Connor in the Sarah Connor Chronicles, a frightfully underrated TV series. She was in that. She's just been in tons of good stuff, tons of really cool nerd properties. Go ahead, Kale.
300.
Yeah, but I didn't love 300.
Yeah.
She was pretty good, though.
Yeah, she's great. Anyway, so I've given away my number 1, and boy, do I not like this movie. By the way, if you haven't seen Dread was missed by a lot of people. I think it's one of those superhero movies that, just kind of, I think it must have come out at a bad time and just kind of didn't, because it came out, 2009, I think, or is that too late or too early? 2012. Carl Urban is so good in that movie. Like, he's just perfect. He's got the perfect because, like, to play Dread, you have to have the perfect scowl. You have to have and Carl Urban has the perfect Judge Dredd scowl. Lena Headey plays the villain. Olivia Thirlby, that is a hard name to pronounce, playing Judge Anderson. Really good movie. Anyway, now that we give my number 1, actually, do we have any honorable mentions? Jim, do you have any honorable mentions you'd like to bring up?
So I would like to do some honorable mentions of movies that made some bad lists that I think don't belong on the bad lists. One of them is a movie that I mentioned before is being incorrectly placed on bad lists, which is Iron Man 2.
Look, it's me. I'm here. Deal with it. Let's move on.
I think Iron Man 2 was a pretty fun movie. The guy that plays Justin Hammer is, I think, tremendous comedic relief in the movie.
You don't have to do a lot of work to pitch Sam Rockwell in this room.
He's fantastic. I think the villain isn't great, but I don't know, the action scenes are pretty good. Overall, I think it's an entertaining movie. For me, it's a rewatch, which means it's probably in like the top 25% of the superhero movies that I've seen. I will rewatch Iron Man 2.
I would agree.
Jim, you need to watch more Sam Rockwell movies.
Yes.
You need to watch more Sam Rockwell movies.
Watch Moon.
I watched
Glory
Days a couple times.
Matchstick Men.
So the other honorable mention that was on some bad lists that shouldn't be anywhere near is Watchmen.
And all the whores and politicians will look up and shout, "Save us." And I'll whisper, "No."
I think Watchmen, even though it doesn't stick religiously to the source material, the changes that it makes, I think actually improve the story.
I have something to say about that, actually, and it's this. I think sometimes the hatred for Zack Snyder gets a little overblown and sometimes spills over into other movies. No, The Watchmen's a good movie. In fact, I've watched the full version, which the full version includes the the Legend of the Black, the pirate animated story.
I have not seen that.
In the comic book. Anyway, so they produced that as well. And the full length, the full version, which is, I think, like, I don't know, 4 hours and 10 minutes long or something like that, includes all the extra footage. Plus it includes the inserts of the pirate comic book that the kid on the street is reading. It is long, but it's solid. It's a solid movie. And just because you hate some other Zack Snyder movies doesn't mean you have to hate that movie too.
So those were my honorable mentions. Were not bad movies.
Kale, honorable mentions.
Oh, I hope you got a minute.
Well, I think the question is how much time do you have?
I'm going to start off with what you said about Dredd. Judge Dredd was a giant pile of crap, but we got Dredd out of it. So, first honorable mention, Daredevil.
Yeah, it's for real. What do you want? Justice.
Ben Affleck and his ex-wife.
Jennifer Garner.
And just not a fun movie, but I think maybe not their fault. Just it wasn't the right time.
There is a director's cut of Daredevil
say
out there, which is different. So if people want to watch that, keep an eye out for it. There is a alternate cut of Daredevil, which you should be able to watch.
The Netflix series, we got the Netflix series out of it, which is awesome. Let's see. You already mentioned BVS and Green Lantern. Bulletproof Monk. Bulletproof Monk is a honorable mention for me. I wrote something, but I can't read it from here. Let's see. Thunder Force.
Do you have any idea what you've done? You just took our only formula for super strength.
That's an honorable mention. It presents a positive image for certain women. Spawn.
Who made you God, little man? Not that gun, not that uniform, nothing.
Is an honorable mention for me.
Which one?
The original. It was new and different. Had Michael Jai White, John Leguizamo, Martin Sheen. I mean, it was an interesting film. It didn't get a lot of fanfare, but I think it was better than people thought it was.
There is one Spawn that was produced, and that is the cartoon for HBO. There is no such thing as any of their Spawn that was produced. I'm sorry.
All right, fine. The Spirit.
Come on! Toilets are always funny.
And that's an honorable mention because I barely remember it, and most people don't remember it at all. It's so forgettable. It's so boring that it's an honorable mention on worst hero movies, superhero movies. X-Men Last Stand.
I'm the Juggernaut, bitch!
Because the ending doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Send Wolverine to kill her because he loves her and he could be destroyed and take it or whatever, and it's like dumb. So dumb. And you could just whatever. Jim will like this. The Ang Lee Hulk.
Tango 1, Tango 3, I have contact. Holy shit, he got my missile!
That's an honorable mention. I think the biggest problem with that movie was just the incredible. You talked about the overacting before. Eric Bana and Nick Nolte in that movie, they're just so over the top. It's like Bana's like seething rage for no apparent reason scene. Just it gets under my skin. It irks me. It annoys me. On top of that, I have some that I want to mention that I will defend, as I mentioned at the top of the show. Punisher Warzone. I will defend that movie.
It's a bad movie.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
What are you? I'm complicated.
I will defend that movie.
It's a bad movie.
Jonah Hex.
Hey, Hex! What happened to your face?
I will defend that movie.
That's also
Man of Steel.
Never.
I will defend that movie. Constantine.
You will live. You will live.
I will defend that movie.
Okay, maybe
Venom.
What are you doing? No, please don't. Eddie, please. Now I'm gonna call the police.
I will defend that movie.
Awesome.
And saved for the last bit, my last honorable mention, my honorable mention, because it was going to be my number 6 if we had a number 6, was Catwoman. And the reason that I picked that one is because it just fell on its face. It was just it was
It's
lost
funny because
out
cats
there in
usually
the
land on
ether.
their feet.
And I think the problem wasn't the cast. Halle Berry's very attractive. She's very well-known actress. She's been in a lot of great movies. But Catwoman is just not a standalone character. Every time you see Catwoman, she's in a Batman movie. She's in a Batman movie because that's where she belongs. And well, let me rephrase that. That's where she fits best on a movie screen. Because as this movie proved, or has proven that she just by herself, it's like, man, she's just a cat burglar. Who cares? I mean, I could be watching Hudson Hawk.
Which, by the way, you should, because Hudson Hawk is a masterpiece.
Oh, the Pope warned me never to trust the CIA.
I would like to give my honorable mentions if I could. First of all, some of your honorable mentions you were defending, you shouldn't defend because they're bad, but it's fine. Catwoman was going to be my first one because it's sort of mind-boggling when you watch that movie that like they did this on purpose. Like this is just, that's what they were going for. They did it and it was terrible. Also, Halle Berry, I believe one of the only actresses to win Best Actress at the Oscars and a Razzie in the same year. And she accepted her Razzie, which is something.
That's pretty gutsy. I like it.
Son of the Mask. Because The Mask is a comic book movie. And The Mask is a good comic book movie. Son of the Mask is Jamie Kennedy, who's one of the worst people that has ever lived. I mean, he's not like Hitler, but he's pretty bad.
Huh? You must be in some alternate reality because I don't think that movie actually exists.
Well, I wish
it's not real.
I wish I
existed.
Not
real. It's not real.
One that I think we have to mention because it's there. It's one Mr. Shaquille O'Neal in Steel. But I feel like that movie is so goddamn goofy that you can't really hate it. Like you look at it and it's like, this is clearly just nonsense. Like everything about this is nonsense. And so I can't really hate it, but it is clearly a bad movie. And the last one is one that we didn't talk about. I don't think people talk about a lot, and that's Dick Tracy.
Big Boy Caprice, Breathless Mahoney, Flat Top, the DA, Prune Face, Mumbles, Lips Manless, and the Blank are out to get the greatest detective of all time.
I couldn't put it as worst comic book movie, but it is so weird and bad that I feel like we have to talk a little bit about it, even though it's like, it's just, and by the way,
Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty apparently still owns the rights to this movie and like is apparently always shopping around to make another Dick Tracy movie, you know, since this movie first came out.
Not going to give up. I can't believe that didn't show up on any of the lists I looked at.
I saw that movie in the theater. I saw that movie in the theater. This came out in 1990, and it was such a weird bananas movie with some great practical effects. Like the practical effects for people was really good.
The villains have all sorts of weird faces and stuff.
I mean, it's
they all had. Sorry, go ahead. Nicknames, but about the. I mean, look up the characters or the actors that are in the movie.
It is Warren Beatty, Madonna, Al Pacino. Let's see here. William Forsythe, Charles Durning. This movie had like big actors in the craziest makeup you've ever seen in your life. It's worth watching. because of how just weird and bananas it is. And the fact that if you were to talk to Warren Beatty, apparently he still believes they're going to make a sequel to this any day now.
He also made
Jim's
Ishtar,
gonna-
so
To a movie that came out 32 years ago. Anyway, that's all my honorable mentions.
And an emotional bubble wrap that keeps it from harm.
Jim, what is your number one?
Well, since we already kind of talked about this guy and this awful movie here, I'm gonna do my number one as probably one of my most disappointing movies, and that's Spider-Man 3. Emo Spider-Man, the first appearance of Venom. It's just,
No, I don't buy that. That wasn't Venom.
they tried to do too much in this movie. First of all, you've got Venom going on, you've got Sandman. They make Sandman the guy that kills Uncle Ben. Harry becomes the new Green Goblin. Like, there's enough stuff going on in this movie. It could have been 3 movies, and none of it works together. And on top of that, you have Spider-Man being moody and angry, and it's just it's cringy. Cringy,
And he can dance.
is the word that I would use. Not good.
Yeah, I sort of buy that. Just the idea that sometimes the worst movie isn't the worst movie. The worst movie is the one that you think is going to be good. And then you just like walk out thinking, what was that? What happened? By the way, apparently the studio made him put Venom in the movie. Like, Sam Raimi did not want to do that. I don't know. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it seemed like a first real attempt at like a big collab where they had a whole bunch of characters coming from different directions in one movie. And they didn't really get good at that until way late in the 2000s, the teens.
I completely
I don't
agree.
want to knock it for that. It's just like maybe they were asking too much. Maybe we just didn't have the technology to do that right at the time.
I think that you just had to write it better. It just had to be like, because I think The Dark Knight, you have 2 big villains that are separate, and they make it work. They sort of intertwine their origins together in a way that sort of makes sense, and that they feel like sort of semi-real people. But then, I mean, but then again, I mean, have you guys seen the Morbius movie? And if you haven't, you're right. I mean, you look at the end of there, and I'm sorry for people that haven't seen the Morbius movie, but you've already been lucky enough to not have watched that movie. And it's just like Vulture shows up and he's like, "Hi, I'm Vulture. I'm from a different universe. I think Spider-Man's the reason I'm here. Let's team up." And it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like that's your origin.
So
like, I'm here and I've heard there's a Spider-Man, so he must be the issue. And it's like, somebody wrote that. Somebody.
Morbius is post multiverse.
No, basically what happens is, so the end scene of the Loki series is sort of introduces the multiverse and introduces Kang the Conqueror. And because of that, Sony's just like, well, that means we can pull Vulture into the universe that has Venom in it and Morbius in it. By the way, there's no Spider-Man in that universe that we know of.
Right. Also, what
there will be.
I don't understand why they would have to pull him in from multi. Like, how would anyone know whether there was a Spider-Man and a Vulture in the other movies that Sony's been dealing with? I don't understand why.
Jim, you are asking one of like 1,000 questions that don't make any sense about this. You're just beginning the list of like, wait a minute, but what about?
Why?
So, and then they did the thing in the Venom movie, the last Venom movie, like Venom goes to the Spider-Man's universe, to the MCU, but then at the end of the Spider-Man movie, he, without having interacted with anybody, he just appears in the end credit sequence, then goes back to the other universe, and it's like, Why did that happen? It literally had no effect on anyone at all. And I would reiterate that in the Venom / Morbius universe / now Vulture universe, there's no Spider-Man that we know of.
There will be.
It's going to be Ben Reilly.
And also, where did the Vulture get his huge Vulture costume if there's no Spider-Man and no Vulture in that universe? I'm telling you, this, just a big old gur. I should have put Morbius on this list, but I couldn't. Anyway, Kale, what is your number one? Does it have anybody who is bitten by a radioactive bat?
He's a living vampire.
It's my number one is actually a tie between Batman and Robin, Batman Forever.
If there's anybody watching this that, let's say, loved Batman Forever and went into Batman and Robin with great anticipation, if I disappointed them in any way, then I really want to apologize, because it wasn't my intention. My intention was just to entertain them.
So apparently throughout filming, Tommy Lee Jones was purposefully avoiding Jim Carrey and basically didn't talk to him anytime they didn't have scenes together. And apparently, and this is Jim Carrey telling the story. Jim Carrey goes up to Tommy Lee Jones in a restaurant, I think maybe years after the movie or sometime after the movie. I don't know how long. And basically confronts Tommy Lee Jones about why he never talked to him and why he kind of felt he'd gotten the cold shoulder. And Tommy Lee Jones' quote from Jim Carrey was, I cannot sanction your buffoonery.
That's what Tommy Lee Jones said to me, too. He said he couldn't sanction my buffoonery.
He couldn't?
He couldn't sanction my buffoonery.
What movie is this?
And that's when we did Batman together.
Wait, you're the star, though.
I was the star, yeah. That was the problem.
Which, by the way, you can totally picture Tommy Lee Jones saying with an absolute straight face, I cannot sanction your buffoonery. And to be honest, sometimes I feel like I can't sanction Jim Carrey's buffoonery. So I sort of get where he's coming from.
I completely agree. But I also didn't co-star in a film with him where I also was a complete buffoon in the movie.
Right. I think that we can also not sanction his buffoonery,
exactly.
To be fair.
A little kettle and pot situation going on there, is there?
I think so. Yeah, I agree, Kale. I think those are not good movies.
I mean, I picked those as my number one, even though you guys kept hammering away at them through the whole list from the get-go, even before Brandon bailed on us to go spend time with his family like a freaking normal person. But no, like that was my number one that I was trying to stay away from for a minute. Because I mean, it is very cartoonish. Like the first, okay, you guys kind of knocked on Batman and Batman Returns, and I'll say that I actually kind of enjoyed those movies. I didn't think, I mean, at the time, for the effects, the actors were good, and I didn't mind that grittiness. And now the Batman you want now is dark and gritty, so it's kind of funny that you look back on the whole biting the nose off thing, and that's too dark. That's too dark. But now he's branding people on screen, so
it's a whole new world.
But yeah, I mean, they're just so, like, there's neon everywhere. Why? I don't know. It's weird.
I remember watching both of those in the theater, in the Boone Theater, and hating both of them. All right, Jim, do you have any final thoughts on bad superhero movies or bad Batman movies or bad Batman superhero movies?
I just want to circle around back to a point that I made earlier about how it's lucky we even have superhero movies. So I'm just going to read some of the superhero movies that were made in the early Marvel run. Howard the Duck, Blade 2.
First of all, Blade's good.
Daredevil, Hulk, The Punisher, Blade Trinity, Elektra, Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider, which we haven't even talked about, though, how bad those were. Another bad,
because you don't talk about Nicolas Cage. He will show up at your.
Another bad Fantastic Four film, And that's all before we get to Iron Man, which is the start of the MCU. I mean, there's plenty of bad films since then, but before, like, it was 2 out of 3 were really bad.
By the way, I should say, and this is an important note because people are going to yell if we don't. You had originally asked me if Howard the Duck was the first Marvel movie, and it wasn't. There was one that came out 8 years earlier, which is sort of
Doctor Strange.
The original Doctor Strange from 1978, which came out the same year as Superman. Did not get quite the same fanfare, I'm led to believe. It says a TV movie, so I guess it's sort of you could kind of, whether you call it a movie. One interesting fact though, it does have Jessica Walter in it, R.I.P. Of Archer and Arrested Development fame, and she is fantastic in both of those things. I don't know if she's fantastic in this movie. I doubt that much of anything is fantastic in that movie. But yes,
I watched
The Danger Zone.
Danger Zone.
Kale, do you have any final thoughts on any bad superhero movies?
Lana! No,
not a superhero movie, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that like Jim says, like, how'd they survive? Because people want heroes. People like heroes. And that was actually in the movie Enemy at the Gates. They actually said that. Give them heroes, sir. If you've never seen that movie, which is not a superhero movie. But yeah, I think that superhero or hero in general sells. People want to see the good guy win. People want to see the good guy win.
Sometimes people just the bad guy win though. But that's all I have. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And have a good drink and have a good day.
I did one film, Batman and Robin, which was a yes. Thank you. Which was a disaster. But other than that, there's no reason for me to have ever done anything to go to Comic-Con.
But didn't you apologize to the crowd at Comic-Con for Batman and Robin?
I always apologize for Batman.